Hey guys, my name's Tom, and I want to talk about 40k for a bit. First thing I want to talk about is Necrons. They are not exactly in a great place right now in Warhammer 40k, and I'm going to go over a couple of the reasons why, as well as a couple of the changes that I propose, or at least, wish list changes that I would hope would happen. So let's go over the first part, which is the current state. As I already said, it's not great. A lot of the leader / HQ options just cost a lot and don't do a lot. They require a fair amount of fandangling to have them be effective, and ultimately they're mostly just support units. That being said, there are some effective HQs. Obviously, I'm not trying to downplay everything here. I think catacomb barges are pretty good. I think, or command barges, excuse me. I think overlords are not actually all that bad. But still, when you're playing against Space Marines or Drakari or just about any of the other factions right now, it can feel like your HQs just don't do a whole lot for how much you're paying for them. I think a common criticism that you're going to hear a lot is that command protocols just do not do what they need to be doing. They are not as effective as other chapter sort of faction-specific benefits. And ultimately, they're a lot of preparation for not a lot of payoff. You also run into the issue that reanimation, while effective in some cases, just doesn't feel very good. Neither for the player animating or for the player they're playing against. Also, for a faction devoted entirely to ancient weaponry, it's just not all that reliable. You have to really pick and choose your range profiles if you want to have an effective shooting phase. A lot of D6 shots at D6 damage, just not going to get the job done. And to top it all off, the flavor doesn't really match the gameplay. It's a question of, these are these ancient robot dynasties coming up from their Toon Worlds, and they're getting crushed. Their weapons aren't that effective, they are not that sustainable, and they have a unit called Immortals, which are just absolutely not immortal at all. They have, there's a lot of things going wrong. So let's jump into it. Command protocols, first of all, I think could use the most simple buff. They really just have so many hoops that you have to jump through. It's a question of, do you have a noble alive? Do you have units within 6 inches of a character? Did you pick the right command protocols at the beginning of the game for the phase that you're currently in? And ultimately, if you want to actually take advantage of the protocols, you really are limited to the Sarge Khan and Silent King. So you don't have a lot of options there. I think it'd be very easy to remove the requirements for protocols and make them a lot more like the Doctrinas or other faction-wide buffs for other factions. They shouldn't have to be within 6 inches of a character. They probably shouldn't need, to set them preemptively. Maybe it's something like at the beginning of the command phase, you can decide something, or the beginning of the battle round. Ultimately, I find that Sudden Storm and Eternal Guardians are the only ones that I think are okay as is. And generally, there are, 5 dynasties that don't do a whole lot, and one of them that actually interacts with the system. So it's just not a great system to begin with. Not something you want to rely on when you're building a Necron army, nor something that you necessarily can do a whole lot with, even if you want to. As for the specific dynasties, there's not a lot in regards to choices that really pique my interest, but obviously it's not all about me. I do think Novak is pretty good as is. I think Mefrit suffers a lot in regards to rules not matching up with their flavor. I mean, they're shooting the power of suns at people, and it's getting 1 AP at half range. So that's not great. Really, I just don't care about the dynasties outside of the really bad named characters that they already have. So custom dynasties are currently where it's at. As for the custom dynasties themselves, I think they deserve the Gene Stealer cult treatment, which is that each custom chapter tactic, for lack of a better word, they're not all created equal. Giving them individual points costs will make the rest of the options a little bit more appealing. As for the ability changes for the army, I think reanimation needs a buff. Removing the requirement that a unit must still be alive in the unit for them to reanimate, I think makes a lot of sense. You know, why the one Necron that's dying last is worse at reanimating than the one that died first, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. Give rerolling ones for reanimation to more units, I think that would make sense. Just having it on the warriors gives the warriors a lot of durability, but ultimately I think it's just a missed opportunity. I also feel like the warlord traits for the Necrons need a complete rework. There's just none really worth running at this point compared to other warlord traits in other armies. And besides Orb, Veil, and the Voltaic Staff, I don't think the relics are worth taking either. As for new abilities, I think this is an opportunity for Games Workshop to really explore what it means to be a Necron and how the Necrons differ from armies like AdMech and other similar factions. I think focusing on their ability to teleport and, you know, the lore of having awakening tomb worlds would be really interesting. I also think having warriors just come out of the ground as free reserves would be interesting. Maybe a little bit OP, maybe a little needs balancing, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about interesting mechanics that they could potentially bring in. I also like the idea of hacking other enemy technology. I think that's something that they currently do a little bit, but I'd love to see that fleshed out more. And in regards to specific datasheet changes, I think giving the bigger weapons more reliability and more of a glass cannon feel would be great. I mean, they're ancient weaponry, but it's, you know, they're coming out of the ground, they haven't been repaired, so I could see something like a plasma profile that's overcharged. Also, I think the Scorpec Lord deserves to be able to equip a Resurrection Orb. The fact that only the Lord, Overlord, and Locust Lord are able to equip them just kind of leaves the Scorpec Lord assed out. I also think Telsa Arcing is a really cool ability, but it just doesn't do enough right now. And the entire Cryptic Arcana page is nigh useless, so just take a whole another crack at that. Alright, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. If you like what you saw, you can like and subscribe. Otherwise,